Well, it seems we've arrived at the final chapter of Here Today, Here Tomorrow. And I must admit, I've received many comments. And in all honesty, I feel I must deal with these now. Now, I did say that although the programme was filmed in 1997, it still had relevance to today. Not so, says JW from London. True, there are striking similarities, but there may be striking differences too. And he quite rightly outlined these. Now, I admit that in this 21st century, in contrast to 1997, people are now quite free to criticise long-established institutions, and they frequently do too. The government, poor old Boris and his merry men, members of the royal family, and of course the church and religion in general. But the church is commissioned to serve the society in which it finds itself. And when you think about it, this is not easy. Deference has gone. But please, let us not lose respect too. It's also been brought to my attention that apart from two of my films, A New World and The Paranormal, not one black or Asian face appears on the screen. This appears to address a challenge then, and a change in race relations and in our society in general. If we made a film today, this would not be the case. And I admit with pleasure, this is quite correct. Many of the people we interviewed in the streets said, well, the church has got to change, you know, don't you think so? I mean, it's got to get more modern, more with it. Well, many churches are experimenting with change and have been now for some time. However, many long-term worshippers may disagree with changes, especially these sort of changes. And they definitely shouldn't be ignored, really, because many of them have given a lifetime of service to the church, not to say giving. So their views should be taken in seriously, really, and evaluated. It's a very tricky situation, because on the one hand you want to make the church more informal and welcoming and try and get young people in the future. On the other hand, you don't want to push out long-term worshippers who've stuck by the church. It's difficult to find a good solution. Maybe one could be a separate service, but a lot of people wouldn't like that. They want to see a sprinkling of youth sitting around. So the only thing I can think of is more sharing. Yes, let's have some songs which have replaced hymns, but also include a few well-loved hymns. I think that might be a way to go. We should always remember that the growth of the church does depend on young people. They are the future of the church. They are tomorrow. And I'm retired, so I suppose you could say I'm yesterday. The current clergy, they are today. But the young people, they are tomorrow. And without them, the church would fizzle out altogether. Now, we should remember that in every congregation, there might be one person or two or more who come in and hope to receive a message. They may be losing their job, can't pay their mortgage, or there's loads of things. It could be a result of violence. They think, I've nowhere else to go, I'll go into the church. It could be a tragedy, sudden calamity that has befallen them. Let me tell you a quick story about a soldier who was in the SAS. Suddenly got the call to go to the Middle East. he went with 5 others. And in no time at all he found himself trapped behind a huge truck wheel with bullets pinging all around him, he told me. 4 of his partners died. He was left on his own, and he thought, I'm not going to get out of this. And suddenly he said some words from a sermon that I had said on the one occasion that he dropped into my church. From words from a sermon drifted into his mind. And he prayed to God, and he said, if I get out of this, I will definitely change my ways. And by some miracle, he said he got out of it. I know this because he left on the altar of the church a large carving which he struggled to bring back on an RAF plane from Jerusalem, and he also gave me this. Can you imagine that being forced down on your head? This is a good replica of the crown of thorns placed on Jesus' head. So some words, you don't know what you're doing. You could be by a hymn, it could be in a psalm, in the prayers, or the vicar's sermon, but something reached out and lodged in the man's head. So we should remember that odd person that comes into the church. And the only way he's going to get that is if we do pay reverence to the holiness of the gospel, to the teachings of the Bible, to the hymns. Oh, songs are nice, yes, but they can be a bit superficial sometimes. I like an old hymn because it's got guts in it and a message in it. So here then is the final part of our film, Here Today and Here Tomorrow.
In part 2 of the video, we saw that when a parish had a vision of what God wanted it to do in a particular area, then God helped it to happen. First came the vision, then it was time to think about how it could be resourced. At St Margaret's, the main resources were its people.
I moved to Heywood 8 years ago, and I came along to the toddler group with Jenny when she was about 2. Met a lovely group of people here. Not just people that worshipped at St Margaret's, but people that just use the church for their facilities as well. And a lot of them are parents of the children at the school. So that was nice. Made a lot of new friends here. Started coming along to church. I'd been away from church for a long time, and it was a gradual thing for me to come back.
We felt that the church itself was actually underusing the facility. We have a very kind of traditional parochial model here, and we just wanted to kind of get ourselves involved in the things that the community was concerned about. So we felt we needed to reach out, but with all the other things of parochial ministry, it was difficult. So we put a bid into the Church Urban Fund and got some funding for an initial period, 2 years, for an outreach worker. Networking, I suppose, is the key word nowadays, making sure people have the information and making sure everybody's keyed into it, including the lay folk. And LNSMs are very good at reminding me that lay folk are part of this outfit as well.
At Christ Church, having taken the decision to employ the detached family worker, the church then set about finding ways to fund the project.
For quite a long time now at Christ Church, they've had a vision of creating a parish room at the back of church. And I think it was fairly difficult for them when I came to make a decision to support the project, knowing full well that the parish room project would have to be put on hold. Again, it was a major project for the life of this church, being a fairly small congregation. And so that must have been a difficult decision for them to make, yeah. When we went into the second 3-year phase of the project, we were again faced with a situation of keeping the project going by having to find resources and finance and funding from outside sources. And again, a dedicated team of 2 or 3 people put a lot of hard work into putting applications, putting a project brochure together, putting an application out to lots and lots of different trusts and grant-making bodies, and the money came in.
At St Ambrose, it took a great deal of time and persistence to find the funding for their vision.
The area around here has a lot of problems. We suffer from high unemployment, high crime, all those sorts of problems. But the nature of the housing is that it's quite small housing. We have a high proportion of young families with young children, often single parent families. A lot of people who need a lot of support, and that's what we wanted to offer to people. There isn't as much safe play areas. People don't have gardens for the kids to play in, and there are lots of problems with, the parks tend to get vandalised and things, so there's problems there about sort of space for the kids. First of all, we talked to a lot of people. We talked to local people to try and identify the real needs and find out what was already happening. We talked to the professionals, the health visitors, to social services, in the schools, the nurseries and things like that. We tried to work together with a wide range of people. We then set about, once we'd identified a sort of project, we then set about fundraising. That's the difficult bit. Once we got some funding in from CUF, that helps you to get the rest of the funding, which is hard work of just going through the various books, writing your application forms, getting knockbacks, but getting some money in. And eventually we had enough money, or promises of money, to appoint a worker.
God provides us with more than enough to fulfil the mission of His church. We have to find ways of releasing these resources, be they our time, or talents, or our money. Those of us who have in abundance are commanded to share with those who have little. St. Paul offers us a powerful image of the church as the body of Christ. As parts of this body, no matter how small or weak we feel we are, each of us is vital in sustaining the health of our church, whether in the parish, the diocese, or beyond.
I believe that God has made available much resources in the diocese. In terms of energy and imagination, there are people who really are caring for folk in terms of bereavement and care for children and sick folk in the parishes. There are many splendid particular projects on some of our more problematic housing estates, whether inner city or outer city. And there's a bundle really of money within the diocese. But we do have to persuade people that they need to be willing to give of themselves, their time and energy, and willing to give of money as well. We do have to resource the church financially, as well as be people of prayer and people of gift.